It's one of the things that our product teams and our engineers really like working on.
Yeah.
Because if they can do something where they're leveraging a technology that the devices have, it's the exciting part of doing what we do.
Welcome to Homescreen. This week I'm joined by Sarah Guha as a product director at Starling. Thanks very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Cool. So just to give you a quick rundown of what Homescreen is. So thanks very much again for joining us on the show today. What this is a show all about product and design, where we speak to makers and people who are creating this really exciting set of fintech propositions, and we're going to talk to them about how they make the stuff and show you some examples of the stuff in action, so how it looks for the user, how it interacts, that kind of thing. So we'll get kicked straight into a few sort of general questions about how product works at Starling, and then what we're going to do is take a little bit of a deep dive into a few of the functions that are available, how they operate and how they look. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Starling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm product director at Starling. I've been there about nearly 3.5 years or so. So Starling was founded in 2014, and I joined around 2016 when we were starting to look at what our app experience would be. So how are our customers going to actually interact with Starling as a mobile-only current account offering?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I guess if you want to know a bit more, like Starling was kind of founded on a vision that we can make banking better in the UK, actually making it more fairer, a better deal for customers, not charging kind of the fees unnecessarily, and making it more convenient to do your everyday banking. And of course, kind of to stand out and differentiate from some of the incumbent banks, we also want to make sure that you can see and actually understand what's going on with your money, where you're spending it and what are the opportunities to actually save and do better as well. So from a customer experience point of view, that's kind of everything that we've been trying to bring into our app products.
Okay, and so what is the product then? I guess it's you've got a big focus over the past few years on the current account product, but what's the sort of focus nowadays?
So we're still absolutely focused on a current account. So one of the key things that we had within our strategy was that we would deliver a current account and we'd do it really well, and we wouldn't necessarily be too concerned with other products. So we originally launched our personal current account in 2017, and over the past couple of years we've been rolling out to more customers, so making our product and the benefits that it brings available to more people. So we've rolled out joint accounts, we've made our account available for sole traders, and then obviously more recently to SME businesses as well. So we're doing lots of things basically, but really the premise is the same, that the banking experience should be better than what it has been. It should be more accessible, more easy to sign up,
sure.
And that you ultimately as the user have more control of your finances.
Awesome. And I guess you guys benefited from that Remedies funding round that happened a few months ago in terms of being able to build out more of these SME functions and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that obviously has been sort of in the press. We were lucky enough to be awarded 100 million, and that's been put towards accelerating really our ambition for the SME side of the business. We always wanted to make our account available to businesses. I think they perhaps the same or more than personal customers have really found it difficult to get accounts and to sign up to them easily.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a natural step for us to make that available, and really that funding has enabled us to accelerate that through hiring, through taking new offices in Southampton. We've now got an office as well, and all of that is about gearing up and making it possible to have that side of the business as well.
Cool. And so, like as we've mentioned before, this is going to sort of focus on the shared experience of banking with Starling this time. We're going to talk a little bit about how you would go through the motions of sort of opening joint functions, completing joint functions like payments and joint accounts and that kind of thing. So that's really interesting from our perspective, both from a regulatory and from a product perspective. And we're going to see some quite novel approaches there. But first of all, could you tell us a little bit about what you've got in front of you there?
Yes.
Let me just give you a little caveat here in the sense of a lot of you guys have been asking us for the past few weeks about how all the coolest fintechs out there are doing their card delivery. So like the packaging that comes with the card, how that's getting people excited. So Sarah's going to show us something.
Yes. So I've brought along our card pack that arrives in the post when you create a Starling account. If anybody signed up for our account kind of in the earlier days, you would have experienced a sort of sliding pack that's in our kind of signature blue and teal colour.
Yep.
And actually it became very similar to a lot of the packs that people were receiving from other challenger banks, other fintech organisations, and so we sort of felt that we sort of didn't stand out very much, and it didn't necessarily align with the brand that was developing, which is certainly from feedback seen as being, you know, more professional, more of a proper bank, and so we wanted to create a pack that really reflected that.
Okay.
And actually a lot of the inspiration was from retail. So I don't know if you've ever ordered anything from like Mr. Porter or something like that, but you often receive it and it's in, you know, beautiful box, nice wrapping, and your receipt comes in like a high quality stock envelope, and we wanted to replicate that basically. So you open it up, we've got our logo on the front but relatively muted and high quality, and then you open up the pack, and our vertical debit card is presented on the right hand side, with friendly text of how to get going with your Starling account essentially. Cool. And if you remove the card, you've then got key information, which is how to activate your card in app and to find your PIN number for the card in app as well, because you actually create that when you open the account. So it's all been received really well.
How long has this been rolling out with this?
We've had these packs definitely over a year.
Oh, right.
For the last year.
Nice.
And you obviously receive them for personal accounts as well as business and our joint account as well.
And that would look exactly the same for business and joint account users? Would they be slightly different?
It's very similar, slightly different copy content for the business accounts, and our business cards are a dark blue colour. At the moment our joint accounts receive the same card and it just says joint on the back, but we'll be looking to introduce a card in the future that feels different. We've had feedback that people have their cards in their wallet and they can't differentiate between the two, so we're hopefully going to change our joint account in the future as well.
That's an interesting thing that you mentioned there. You mentioned like the Mr. Porter, the sort of the different styles of card packages that are out there in the market. Is that reflective of the kind of user that you're going for nowadays? Is it slightly different to maybe how you were approaching that before?
I don't know if it's reflective of the user necessarily, but certainly as a product and as a brand, we want to be trusted. I think that's something that's really key within our industry, is that as a new kind of bank that people trust us. And I think with that you do often take perhaps a more mature approach to, you know, packaging, how you might design something, the experience, and it comes through in all of those elements of the brand.
Absolutely.
So I think, sort of, I suppose.
That's a really exciting little product there. So I guess one of the really cool things about this is it allows you to sort of start off that relationship with your customer in quite an interesting way. Was that, I guess, a very definite decision on your behalf to make this experience special, make it feel like luxury in some way, right? Yeah,
definitely. I think that when you've opened an account and you've gone through that process, you often actually look forward to receiving the physical element of the account. You've not walked into a branch at this stage, so you've not really engaged with us in any other way other than perhaps via our website and then the app that you've downloaded. So this is the first time that you're receiving something physical, and I think it's really important that it reinforces that experience that you've had in app, and that it reinforces that, you know, it's a product and it's a bank that you can trust and that you're looking forward to use as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we liked most about when we were looking into Starling's app and the way it functions is in the onboarding flow for a user, like a personal current account user, they are given a virtual card kind of as soon as the account's opened, like straight off the bat they're given that. And it's the same visual, it's really striking, really crisp, nice design, but I guess there's that nice touchstone between finishing off and then going and just using the card. You could like basically open the account in the street and go into a shop with it straight away, which is pretty cool. So I guess this stuff has got to work pretty hard in order to be able to like say, you do have your virtual card, but look, here's a physical card as well. That's pretty fun, hey? Yeah,
definitely. I think that's a really good reference. There's something that we kind of set as our the customer outcome that we wanted, was that someone could be queuing to buy a coffee in a coffee shop and have signed up for an account and then have a card to pay for that coffee at the front of the queue.
Nice.
So that was why we wanted to focus on having those virtual cards available in-app and giving customers the ability to then add those to their digital wallets straight away from the app and start to use it. It's great and people do it, but not everybody uses digital wallets. You know, the adoption isn't necessarily as far as we would hope, and so there are certainly a group of our customers who, particularly when signing up for a mobile-only product that they're not necessarily sure of, that wait for the physical card to come in the post before they then would add money onto their account and then obviously go out and spend it as well. So both of those touch points I think are really important, potentially for different segments of customers.
So these are sort of like nice little touchstones and trust points as well. That get the impression there that being able to sort of see the physical manifestation of this card you've seen a virtual version of, almost as a way of making you believe, okay, well this thing's legit now. I understand this. It makes sense to me. I've got a card now. It's kind of banky now, that's really interesting. But next up, we're going to sort of talk a little bit about nearby payment functionality. So here is the new nearby payments. It's a Bluetooth launched feature, right? And then we've got this sort of glowing sort of image. We see the user who's close by that we want to make a payment to, enter the amount from our balance, and add a little note there as well. So very nice, and I really like this interaction here, which is coming just straight up and across. That's really nice. So there we have it from one user's perspective, and then from the others, here we switch over. You can see here our transactions feed as well, but all you need to do is go straight in there and open up your nearby payments, and there a little push notification introduces the fact that the transaction's available. And there we have the transaction. So we've received that, and a nice little bit of detail as well. We can also add receipts. So that's an overview of how the nearby payment functions work. We've seen this sort of across a range of different fintech products. I was intrigued last year when I was doing a bit of research into this kind of thing, but like you guys released this feature and then a lot of others released it sort of in similar times. Seems as if there was a real sort of like a war of like an arms race, you know what I mean, to try and like get these features launched. Was that something which you guys recognized at the time, thinking about this sort of thing?
I think for us, when we've launched our current account product, one of the main things that we wanted to make sure was that it's a current account that has kind of everything that you would need to be able to do your everyday banking. And we focused on that as the first thing in order to make sure that people would see us as a viable bank to switch to or to move to. And then the second part of that was that in order to improve upon the experiences that customers have had with traditional banks, was to make it as easy as possible to put money into your account and essentially move money in and out of it. That's the main thing that people use their bank accounts for. And so throughout the last year and a half, 2 years, we really have done a series of things to make it as easy as possible to pay with Starling. So having Apple Pay available, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. We obviously have faster payments. We've then added international payments. And so for us, adding a way for existing customers to pay another customer who is using Starling as easy as possible was part of that strategy. But obviously, having something that makes it easier to pay each other and that delights the customer and that is something that is innovative and people talk about is really important. And it's really important for growth, I think, both for people interested in fintech and who are talking about what features that we're releasing, as well as our competitors and counterparts, and as well as like doing something with another customer that invokes a conversation and a reason to perhaps recommend or advocate using Starling to do your finances. So I think, yes, there is a general movement, and you will see us release similar things to other challenger banks and other fintechs. Sometimes we've done that first and they have done that first, and I think that's because we're really in the industry. We're all focused on a very similar goal, which is improving the way that people do money management, and that includes obviously paying friends and family.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we're all focused on the same movement, but I wouldn't say it always has to support your kind of core strategy, I think, as well.
Okay. And have you, what sort of situations have you found this feature being used in particular, I guess, and has the uptake been what you've wanted from this kind of thing?
So I think the primary use case is, you're with friends or family and you want to be able to pay them back as easily as you can, basically. Yeah. And if there are people that are using Starling, then there's no need to be able to say, oh yeah, I'll pay you back later, or I'll get your account details and put it off. You've both got your phones there, people always have them in their pockets, you should be able to basically just pay them there and then in an instant. So we wanted to create that outcome, and obviously using the nearby technologies is an innovative way of doing that. And it kind of is, it's as easy as using AirDrop, and people do that all the time to share things like photos and videos.
The effort that goes into building a feature like this, can you talk a little bit on that? Was there any sort of a particular sort of difficulty in utilising Bluetooth technology for this sort of thing?
No, not really. I think from the walkthrough just then, you can see that to start a payment using the nearby payments feature to the end is actually really short. So in terms of actually the app development work, it's quite minimal. There's not an awful lot there, and we reuse the same design components in terms of the payment sheet and the experience of putting in the amount and tapping and then it going up to the top. So it's actually relatively straightforward. It's one of the things that our product teams and our engineers really like working on, because if they can do something where they're leveraging a technology that the devices have, it's the exciting part of doing what we do. So it's really good to be able to dedicate time to introduce features that we think are cool and that we like, and that people will talk about as well.
Okay, and so the kind of more traditional payments, sort of the other payment methods, can you give us a rundown of what those are, and maybe a little bit about sort of the design components that you've been using? You have, I guess, a set use of designers for each individual product area, right?
Yes, so for payments we offer, obviously we've got nearby payments, and we've got faster payments, which is just doing bank-to-bank transfer, international payments as well, and we support direct debits. And obviously, like, increasingly, we've got customers using their debit cards, but people often have like a continuous payment authority. So when a retailer or something has just got the authority to charge your card again and again. So we've got lots of different types of payments in our account now. And one of the things that we're focusing on is making it as easy as possible to manage and understand all of those payments that you've got. So we've actually recently made some enhancements to the payment section of our app in order to better discover what kind of payments that we've got available, and then also better manage those payments going forward. So with nearby payments, for an example, one of the biggest challenges I think that we did have with it is that we launched a feature, we market it, we communicate it, but then actually in app we found that not all of our customers are discovering it, and therefore they're not getting value from it or not understanding the benefit. So we've recently, two key things we've really done within the payment section is introduced primary buttons for sending and requesting money. It's obviously a model that you see quite a lot in apps like PayPal, and within those it allows us to then list the different options that are available. So we've got the nearby payments, international payments, even just sharing things like your account details so that someone can pay you back. And that's been a really a positive thing really for the usability of our payment section, making things able to discover it, allows us to add in new services if we need to as well, and that customers can also then access particular schemes that educate them on the benefits of why they would want to do a particular payment in that way. Have you lent on anything in particular for that sort of process of instructing the user? And I say this because I work on a product which is it's web-based and it's on desktop traditionally, so we found a lot of value in something like intercom and product tours and that kind of thing. Is there a similar sort of, I guess you guys won't be using that sort of thing on the app, will you? We probably won't do like a full tour of the product, but certainly as we focus on the growth of our personal current account, we certainly do need to be, not just looking at growth from the top of the funnel, but actually how we're making customers get value from the product as quickly as possible, and that they understand what they can do. So
that's a hard thing. Like we've struggled with that ourselves, and I think a lot of people will say the same thing, that it's one thing to get a user using a product, but to get them using it optimally and utilising all the features is such a hard challenge, and an interesting one as well.
Exactly. I think kind of introducing things that welcome the customer, that introduce the key things that they should be doing in order to get the most from their account as early as possible. I'm more, rather than kind of an in-depth product tool, I think I lean towards having contextual prompts that tell a customer something that they might want to know about the product, or that they might find useful within the context that they're in. Okay. So we're starting to look much more at how we can make the first sort of empty states, we call them, but the first state that a customer comes to within each of our sections, whether it's payments or our spaces, making those more interactive, giving them a first action to do in order that they can start to use the product more effectively. That kind of thing we'll start to be focusing on, I think, over the next 6 months or so.
Interesting. I've seen Monzo have taken a new approach to this, which is sort of like it's a slightly gamified approach of you tick off so many things, you get like badges and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think it seems to be something that other people are now focusing on and starting to take note of.
I think the other great thing that does is also kind of it gives you immediate things that you want to do, but also sets a path to move towards as well. So, yes, you might be trialing Starling, you might be starting to use it and going and using your debit card, start to understand how the spending insights can help you get more control over your money and when you're spending it. But further down the line, as that customer life cycle develops, there's going to be other things that you're going to want to do. Potentially you want to bring over your direct debits and start managing more of your finances within Starling. And then, if you're happy and you're using it more regularly, do you want to switch and stop using another bank account? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And that's the second part of my question there, was about the sort of makeup of the teams. So do you have, like, for example, a specific set of people working on payments? What the verticals look like?
So they've changed over time. So we have tended to have product teams either focused on areas that we will always need to look after and always focus, or we'll have product teams focused around a particular problem that we want to solve for a customer, or that we need to address as a business. So payments is a good example where we've released a way of making a payment, but there's always ways of optimizing it and making it easier and faster. So that is one team focused on payments. Okay. Onboarding is another. So it's obviously quite a large. It's a long journey that can constantly improve, so that we can get as many people through that process and opening an account as successfully as possible. So we have a team focused on that, and they have been looking at making our account available to more customers, as we spoke about earlier. There are, at the moment, another few areas. One is growth. So looking at customers using the account and becoming active as much as they can. And also, we believe that people get the most value from Starling if they use us regularly, so use us every day, and then start to manage more of their finances using us as well. So from an engagement point of view, that team will focus on moving customers towards using us as their primary account and increasing the number that we have that use us in that way. It's
a big push for you guys, that right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think as we've scaled and grown as well, it naturally brings other challenges, which is, we've had teams focus on, in particular on fraud and reducing the instances of fraud, and how we're detecting things early, so that the outcome for a customer is that we can, minimise the impact to them and the impact to them sort of not having access to their account as well. And as well, looking at reducing the cost that it takes to serve an account as well, so making more things self-serve within the application, so that customers can do more themselves, improving our, the equivalent to FAQs, but improving the amount of things that they can answer as well themselves, so that they're not needing to contact customer services in as many situations too. So typically within the product team, we'll have product manager, designer, engineers, both iOS, Android and platform engineers.
Okay.
It will vary based on the scale of the work, how many there will be.
Okay.
And they focus around that key objective that they're
Sure.
given and work out kind of what the best priorities are to focus on.
And as a director, I guess you will sit at the top of that pyramid and like allow those the other product managers. What's the sort of how heavy touch would you say you are in that situation? Are you sort of the kind of person who allows the product managers to run their own methodologies, that kind of thing, or do you like things to be done in a certain way?
So I'm particularly focused on the growth side at the moment, so the activation engagement for our personal account.
Okay.
I definitely like to empower the teams and allow them to make the decisions and focus on using the data and customer insight to do that. But we will ultimately, work with our leadership team to identify what the overarching company strategy should be,
Okay.
and what our priorities are, and then each of the teams will be responsible for identifying what the opportunities are or what the things are that we can leverage in order to impact or have an impact on that objective.
Okay. And how often are they reporting on that sort of thing to you, like or to the wider team? Sort of like, how do you keep yourselves accountable for this sort of like chopping and changing group of like sort of requirements?
So I mean we're meeting really regularly,
Yeah.
and talking every day really.
Okay.
We're all sat relatively close together, and in terms of presenting those opportunities and what's the next thing that we'll work on, it's week to week kind of activity, and then if it's a larger, more strategic project that we're working on, that then is kind of discussed at a higher level, and prioritization occurs.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So next up, we're going to take a look at the other side of this sort of joint functionality, which is the joint accounts area. So what we'll see here, again, the same format, two sides of the coin here. The joint account functions introduced. We've got this nice introductory screen. Goes back to what you were saying earlier about sort of contextualized sort of looking, how we can prompt these. And then there we've nicely sort of split the gene there, and there we are. That's incredibly quick, and we can order a card straight away. So we've created the pin. This is just for one user, by the way, not for two, I guess. And then we've got a little map there, which gives a cue as to where you are and sort of a prompt to check that that information is correct. And then from the other end, type situation there, and then this, we've found the relevant person. What we can't see here is that this is all being done in close proximity to the user, but it's not being done in branch or anything like that. But we've got confirmation there that the account's been finished, and we can order our debit card. That this is all happening via, I guess, Bluetooth or NFC, or and it's happening when the users are next to each other.
Yes.
What's the requirement there?
So joint accounts are just part of our everyday lives and the way that customers manage their money. And so last year when we launched it, we felt that by not having a joint account, really our offering was incomplete to a certain extent. So we wanted to make joint accounts available, and typically the people that would want a joint account are either a couple living together, or perhaps they're people who are sharing in a flat, or basically they live in close proximity. So we really like the idea that you could be able to do this together when you're sat on the sofa in the evening, when you're talking about your finances and what you need to be able to do to manage them better together. We focused on launching our joint account for our existing personal current account holders in the first instance. And so the way that the experience works is very quick. There's only a few things that you need to do to be able to detect each other, and then accept some key terms and conditions in relation to the joint account. And the reason that is because we've already done a lot of the regulatory checks that we need to do, such as KYC, on each of the individual people when they've opened their personal account. So, the reason that we've already done that makes it really easy to open the joint account, and obviously made it easier for us to launch that sooner. It being something that customers are asking for, that was something that we wanted to be able to do. So from a joint account point of view, Each person, each individual is kind of checked independently of each other. So the actual joining of the accounts is relatively straightforward. Something that we've not done at this point is offer the ability to open a joint account without having opened a personal account to start with.
Right.
And that might be something that we want to do. I think one of the challenges that we've had so far is that from an acquisition marketing point of view, it's very difficult to do targeting around joint accounts when you need to open a personal account first and then do the joining of the accounts afterwards. So one of the things that we might look at is how we can make that a process where customers see that a joint account is relevant to them with Starling and that they join us for that in the first instance. Essentially.
And who was validating this as a use case? You touched on this a little bit there about being couples or people living in flats and shared accommodation or that kind of thing. How did you identify that this was an important set of people to speak to and to offer this function to?
I think in two ways. I think most of us from a personal account point of view are like users of a joint account. And so internally even, like a lot of us have moved over all of our finances to Starling and there was just a piece of the puzzle that wasn't quite finished and wasn't there for us to be able to move our joint accounts over. So I'm not going to lie, we're often motivated by things that we want to see done. But it's obviously something that when we've spoken to customers, they have identified as a reason why they've held back from moving over to Starling, or they have one account but they still maintain another account with a traditional high street bank. And so we really wanted just to chip away at some of those reasons and make it possible for them to become much more all in with Starling. And we do that mainly through customer interviews and talking to customers to understand what else that they would need and what would give them value.
And is that an ongoing process for you guys?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. And I think actually as we've grown so rapidly and at the speed that we're delivering all of our features, it's one of the challenges that we've also had, to be honest. How do you create a culture that is really research focused, that is trying to identify what those problems are based on data, on the insights, and then validating, the idea that we've had or that the experience that we've designed is the right one and that it's going to actually answer it. So some of the things that we're focusing on is ensuring that each of the different product teams, as we've got more and as we've had more, have the data available to them to make those decisions, have access to invite customers in to do interviews, to conduct those interviews and have the support in doing so. And then also circulating that information as well. So as our company has grown, we're over 600 people now across 2 offices in London and Southampton. And we're not all just engineers and product managers. As we've got all the different teams, different functions, both in operations and banking as well, we want to make it as possible that everybody has access to all of that insight that we're collecting and gathering, and they really understand who our customers are, so that effectively they can strive to deliver good outcomes in all of the different areas that they're looking after, as well as the product that they're using.
Okay. And have you found any particular sort of research methodologies useful, or is it all based on sort of the situation? Kind of what are the specifics of that sort of thing?
It really depends on what we're doing. I think on the business side is a good example. That's an area where a lot of us don't own our own businesses. We don't have as many gut instincts about what might solve the problems for them. So we're needing to do a lot of upfront discovery interviews, which is just getting under the skin and understanding business owners, what's important to them, the difficulties that they have and how we can solve them. And really that just takes the form of talking to people, inviting them in, having interviews, understanding their businesses, what's important to them, what their growth plans are. And then, further down the line, we've got ideas or ways that we think might address those problems, and we want to be able to validate them. So we typically would put concepts, prototypes back in front of customers, sometimes the same ones, sometimes other ones, to test whether they think that would, meet their needs and answer a problem that they let us know that they have.
So there's a multi-phased approach in that regard.
Yeah.
Cool. Just on that note, we at 11FS have a jobs to be done practice, and last week, I think it was last week, we had like a jobs to be done, was it a FinTech Insider thing? Yeah. A podcast, so check that out. That's one of the useful methodologies for figuring out how to get under the user's skin, and one that we use a lot here at 11FS. How did you sort of decide to operate this as a Bluetooth or kind of NFC-based feature, in terms of getting close to the user? Was there any requirement for you to do that? Is that something you had to do, or something you chose to do?
Definitely something we chose to do.
Okay.
I think it was based on the insight that most people were together when they wanted to open a joint account.
Yeah, okay.
And we kind of set ourselves the goal that someone could be able to do it on the sofa in front of the TV.
Okay.
I think more and more we're all multitasking and doing things. So we'll watch TV, we've got our phones with us, we're doing other stuff. So that was really just the outcome that we wanted to achieve, and the nearby technology allowed us to do that.
In a neat way as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of it adds to the delight. It's quite satisfying when you do it, and it's done so easily as well. So
cool.
We wanted to achieve that.
Nice. And sort of feature-wise, what's the makeup of the sort of joint account feature set? I guess it's largely very similar to what a personal current account.
Yeah, very similar. Essentially you want to do the same things, which is use your debit card, send payments, typically manage more bills and recurring payments that you have for a household.
Yeah.
And we definitely think that the spending insights was something that was going to value to people managing their finances together. So we've launched all of those features, except that you can see who is spending what. And that's clearly identified. Some of the things that we don't have on the joint account are features like our settle up, where you can pay somebody back more easily. Yeah. And we don't at the moment have joint account, overdrafts either. Okay. But those are things that we would try and roll out to all of our accounts essentially eventually. Yeah. But for the moment, the joint account is limited to the features around using it, paying, making payments.
And when we've seen it before as well, one of the things to note is that we found interesting was that there's very little visually which is different between the joint account and the personal account. You wanted that to be, I guess, a continuous experience between the two.
So definitely within app, one of our goals is that however many accounts that you have with Starling, that you can manage them all seamlessly within the one application, rather than having separate apps to access, which some banks in the past have done, particularly for business and personal. Yeah. We certainly wanted to have one environment and be able to move, between each one easily. We've introduced a kind of switcher mechanism on the left where you tap your profile and then you can see all of those different accounts. It's quite similar to how you would move between Gmail accounts as a good example. Yeah. Okay. The accounts are separate.
So there's already like sort of design language in place for you to pick up on then, I guess, like in terms of switching and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. And I think in terms of a bank account though, it's very important that those finances are separate. Yes. And that they don't merge together. You have your personal account and that's personal, and then you have your joint account with somebody else and you want to keep that separate. Sure. I think one of the things that we've had feedback on is that some customers would prefer to have a little bit more identification for which account they are in when they are navigating elsewhere in the app and using other features. Yeah. At the moment we don't, at a basic level you could use different colours or to anchor them within a section of the app. So that's something that we could potentially improve on going forward.
Awesome. And then just I guess a few more general questions just to round off, but kind of as a product person yourself, just generally, how's the last 3 years been? How have you found the process of developing as an individual and sort of as a team to where you are now? I guess the priorities have changed. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's been an absolute ride, kind of the last 3 years joining Starling and developing the product. I think. Is
this your first product role, sort of like in a proper tech sense, like that kind of thing?
It certainly is within fintech. Okay. So I actually started my career in integrated marketing and did direct mail campaigns of all things. Oh yeah. And naturally started working on websites as people needed those. Yeah. I joined Starling actually having spent some time out in California and being exposed to Silicon Valley and I guess the product managers that creates who are hugely ambitious and wanting to go on and do great things for their own careers, but also for customers and what they want. So actually I came back to London and did a product management course at General Assembly. And I think that's really useful just to kind of validate the methodologies that you're using and how to approach it, but also creates a structured approach to bring product into a company or into a product team that isn't necessarily doing product or is really starting at the beginning. So I found that really useful when I started and joined Starling, and then the last 3 years has been constantly new challenges, which is what I love about doing product.
Cool. And what's up next for the company as a whole and for your particular segment of the product team?
So we have, from a company as a whole, I think we've got a lot of ambitions to build out the business side of our offering, and scaling the organisation in order to cater for that. On the personal current account side, we're focusing on growth. We'll be doing things to support our marketing team in that and with the top of the funnel, as well as making it more useful to use Starling as your primary account. So we see people that are managing recurring payments and direct debits is a clear indicator that somebody's using their account as their main account, and so we'll be doing much more to make it easier as possible to manage those finances and get better insights about how much money is going out for committed expenditure like that, and then what's available as well.
Awesome. That's really great. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. Thanks for that. Where can people find out a bit about you?
They can find out more about us on our website, which is starlingbank.com, or go straight to the app stores and Play Store to download our app even and just try it. Yeah,
and you personally, you'll be on Twitter and that kind of stuff, right?
Yes,
Are you an active tweeter?
Semi-active, I'd say, but at Sarah Guha.
There you are. Okay, cool. So just to tap things off, this show is sort of brought to you by the 11FS Pulse team. So what we do is we gather user experiences and talk about research from that sort of UI and UX perspective. We're talking about how products are built, that kind of stuff. So if you want to figure out a little bit more about that, then head over to pulse.11fs.com. And if you want to send us an email to maybe ask us a few questions about what we've talked about today or what's on the platform, then go to pulse@11fs.com. And thanks very much for joining, and we'll see you next week. Homescreen is a show about all things product and design, where we showcase some of the best examples of user experiences from the 11FS Pulse research platform, which includes over 2,500 user journeys from financial service products around the world.